everybody, and welcome back to the I Love You podcast. I Love You Tea with Trashellie, not sponsored by Yui Hirahara. I'm Ashley,
And I'm Elle.
and whether you're listening to us here live in the Discord or on YouTube, or now also on Spotify, we're back here to talk to you some more about theories. And tonight we're going to be talking a little more about some specific theories that we really like. In particular, a lot that surround the Kim formal. So just kind of a heads up, as you probably already know, just based on the content that we've gotten from the webtoon and from the things that we've already been talking about, anticipate that we might be talking a little bit about implied sexual assault. Obviously, the webtoon doesn't get very graphic about it, and we don't intend to be graphic about how we talk about it either. But if that is, a topic that's really sensitive for you, just be forewarned that that will be coming up. But with that out of the way, we've been talking a lot about theories, and I think it's not a surprise that the Kim formal is where a lot of the theories were really born from I Love You. I think that was kind of the moment for people where, obviously, that is the moment where the story really starts to come together. People start to really see I Love You for what it is. And, even now in the story, we're still continuing to reach back to that and, to call upon it and how it's relating to the story now. For instance, we've got Shin-Ae was at the formal for Gun Kim. We've got the fact that it feels very, very heavily that what happened at the Kim formal very well likely is a parallel or a replay to what happened in Kousuke's past. Even the theory about how Kousuke might in fact be Gun Kim's son, really ties into what we're seeing now. And that's where we're going to start tonight. What am I trying to say here? Sorry. I think we kind of touched upon this before too, how Kousuke being Gun Kim's son is really significant for a lot of reasons. Firstly, because of the fact that Kousuke has worked his whole life to, try to be his father and to earn his father's love and affection. But something that we've also been something that we've talked about before is the fact that, we kind of see a lot in the Kim family that there's a lot of that, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, right? How, Song Chol is very much like his father, and his, Gun is very much like Young Chol, the grandfather, it seems like. And this seems to be a pattern. And one that we've seen come up before is that if we look at Kosuke's birthday art, it kind of feels a little bit more like Yui was testing him, wouldn't you say, Elle?
Absolutely. And so one of I feel like the big things in the comic is this interesting relationship between the Kim family and the Hirahara family. And so one of kind of the interesting things about like the concept of whether or not Kosuke is Gun Kim's son or not is that the implications of that in terms of like Kosuke's emotional processing and his standing in the Hirahara succession line change depending on who his biological father is. But the way that Yui treats Kosuke could exist either way. So like you said, like we kind of have this concept of like her testing him at the birthday party. And I know like I've quoted all the time, but you said it a long while ago as like her testing if all of these men are the same. I'll save the actual phrasing you used for later. But like she has kind of preconceived notions of how men are, of how the elite men are, of especially how Kim men are, and also probably how Hirahara men are. And it feels like at the birthday party, she was very much testing Kosuke and seeing what kind of man he might be.
Right. And especially because Yui is very aware that Shanae is a young underage girl. She is somebody who is in a very vulnerable position. You know, like she's literally skipping school to go help out for money because she is in, you know, a very dire situation. She's not just skipping school, she's skipping school right before exam season, which is, you know, in Korea, that's treated as a really big deal. Um, she knows exactly what she's doing with Shin-Ae. She's testing both how far Shin-Ae is willing to go, but she's also testing how far is Kousuke going to go. And you know, we've seen this before too, where you know it's treated as a joke up until this point, where she's, you know, the whole like, oh, grandbaby's this, grandbaby's that. How, you know, Kosuke, he doesn't bring girls home, he doesn't date, and you know, it feels very much like she's testing. Are you like him, or will you do the things that he does? Testing, does he like the more vulnerable, I can't speak tonight, the more vulnerable girls? Is it that, you know, like we see with Song Chol, how he in particular, the way that he talked to Noel when he asked how he got a famous girlfriend, and the implications that he must have coerced her or blackmailed her, that he must have done something seedy, because like, oh, you can't just get a girlfriend. Like that just doesn't happen. You have to do something to, you know, like force it, right? And you know, that kind of feeling like, oh, so, you know, is Kosuke like that? Does he need that kind of power imbalance? Does he need to feel powerful in order to, you know, be interested or something? Um, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, is she hoping to find that? Or is she hoping not to find it? Like, and I'm not saying that like she wants to see it because, you know, she wants him to be a bad person, but it's kind of like that test, because she believe, you know, like if she believes all men are like this, then it makes it easier to continue to treat him the way that she does, because, you know, in that way it's kind of justified, right?
And
um
oh,
oh, go on, go ahead.
so much, yeah, so much of the way that Yui does toy with people is about proving her own worldview to herself and reaffirming that she is on this righteous path, right? Where she, you know, she likely, in her story, it is like Yui v patriarchy, and she is the hero of this story where she's been put down. All of these men are trash and abusive and power hungry. She can't earn anything because she's a woman, and the world is going to, if you're a woman, the world's going to crush you, and you have to either try your best to rise above it or you're going to crumble and fall. And so you either weaponize yourself or you kind of just lay down and die. And if you're a man, the world's going to hand you everything that you want, and you are, you know, someone who is going to, like you said, like thrive on that power imbalance and like be like kind of excited by it and like captivated by it and take the opportunities given to you and not feel bad about it at all. So like, especially in the birthday arc with Kosuke and Shin-Ae, it's like she she treats Kosuke like this giant pawn, right? We know this. We know that that's the way that she uses him. But part of the foundation of their relationship is likely that she can never not resent her son because she was not allowed to be a powerful Hirahara man realistically, and has this grudge against the patriarchy and the systems that forced her in there and her the way that her family works, whereas Kosuke, her son, is someone who is going to be handed everything that she wanted just by virtue of being a man, but also by being a man he is part of this group of gross men. So she needs him for everything, but she also resents him for everything that he represents. And if he is the same as all the Kims, then that resentment is justified. and it justifies her using him as this pawn, as well as the fact that she doesn't love him, that she probably never never will love him, possibly can't love him. And just all of the way that she treats him and views the world, as well as how she treats the women around her and offers them up to these men. And
Right.
like, yeah, and I lost where I was going.
Yeah, I was just going to agree. It's the fact that, like you said, she needs to justify her world view because, we've talked a little bit about how on some notion or on some level, Yui has a notion that the things that she does is wrong. Like, we talked about her conflicting feelings about Shin-Ae and her intentions with her. And I think it is in some way similar with Kousuke, is how, like you said, she needs to justify and reconcile how she's treating him with who he is, with that sense that resentment that he gets everything that she's worked so hard and will never be able to receive. So in a way, it would be so much easier for her if he was like Gun, if he was like Songchul, because there wouldn't be some minuscule part of her that would recognize that the way she treats him is wrong. I'm not saying that I think
Yes.
she acknowledges that part of her or that she listens to that little voice, but like on some level, people, we all have that conscience. How loud that conscience is does differ from person to person. And, I think with Yui, it's probably like a really, really, really quiet whisper. But, like you said, that justification is what drowns that out and, gives her that sense of righteousness and allows her to, walk with her head forward and her shoulders straight with no qualms about what she's doing and how she treats the people the way she treats them.
Yes, it's very much like at its base, it's very much the ends justify the means, where like this world is horrible. It's been horrible to her, it's horrible to everybody. And so she uses Kosuke as a pawn to get what she deserves because she deserves it. And she uses Shin-Ae as a toy, both because she basically in my opinion, Yui kind of has this view that women need to be broken to be built back up again because that's how she
Mhm.
lived her life. And so she is doing all these things and she does seem to know that they're wrong, especially with like how she deflects when people do call her out on it.
Mhm.
Like especially in that episode where she's like having like going head to head with Shanae and where we see Yui kind of in those shadows. Um and she is, you know, doing that kind of like, "Oh, like, you hated it, it's horrible, but, like, I didn't hold a gun to your head, and it's you're gonna be thanking me in the long run," like, but at the same time, she does all this covertly, she does it all behind the scenes, she does it
Mhm.
all through manipulation, she knows that it's this dark underworld, but it's fine because life is going to break you down anyway, so at least she's using it for a righteous purpose.
Right. Which
And
I
also,
think
like, for the men, they deserve it.
right.
Like, in her view, the men and the weak women deserve it, and the strong women will come out stronger, so the ends justify the means.
Which actually makes a really good segue because the interesting thing about Yui is, so clearly she loathes the patriarchy. She has great resentment for men, and especially men who are given everything that they want without having to work for it. So especially the elite upper crust men who are born with that silver spoon. And like when I say silver spoon, I mean like those diamond encrusted, like platinum plated spoons because, silver is just so far beneath them, right? So despite that, it's really interesting that, Yui, the Hiraharas, and the Kims have such a close relationship because you would think that a man like Gun Kim would be somebody that Yui would not want to have anything to do with. And yet, interestingly enough, we have the theory that Shin-Ae was at the formal for Gun Kim. And it really, really holds up, doesn't it? Um, it's just Yui is really fascinating, and I know that we've promised ourselves we're not going to dig really deep into this because we are going to do a whole episode on Yui. Like we can't do her justice without, going all the way in. But we also know that we can't like talk about her without, dedicating a little bit of time to it. Like,
Yeah.
and like Elle said, like I also subscribe to the belief that Yui believes that women have to be broken and rebuild themselves. Either you are somebody who is strong and you rebuild yourself, or you are, somebody who is weak and you never manage to. I think we've seen that in how she treats Meg and Alyssa and Shin-Ae, and why Shin-Ae is the one who maintains her interest, and why she passed Alyssa along and really doesn't. Well, no, that's not. Well, how do we feel about fast pass spoilers? Are we going to like just like flag them? Are we going to be like, hey, let's put timestamps, or are we going to like avoid them?
I think for the verbal, we weren't really able to timestamp anything in the chat, but we should verbally
Right.
state fast spoilers, and I will timestamp everything in the recording accordingly.
Okay. I didn't take task about this before. I'm sorry, guys. Just because we're at that point where it's really hard to like have this conversation without it. Um, so just because it's hard to talk about Alyssa and Yui's relationship at this point without, addressing where
It's
they
all in
currently
the
stand.
chat.
Right. Because, I do feel like Yui is casting Alyssa aside to Gun. Like I still feel that. But, Yui's still exercising her control there. Like she hasn't completely given her up, but it's not like she's not Yui's favorite toy, and like let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
She's kind of like she's still holding the puppet, but it's like on the edge of the stage, and Goon is the one who's really playing with it now.
Right, right. Um, so gosh, what was I even saying before that? Oh my gosh.
We were
So
talking about how it's weird that they have such a close relationship and
right,
probably
the breaking the
get
girls, the breaking
into
right.
breaking the girls and why.
Um, and it's just obviously she sees herself in Shin-Ae because Shin-Ae is the kind of girl who she's got a lot of that. She's not easily broken. She has a lot of spirit. She bounces back. Whereas Alyssa's, I'm going to call her tenacious in her own way. She's not at all tenacious in the way that Shin-Ae is, but she's mostly tenacious in the way that you just have to keep going, like
I
for
feel like
her. What's that?
I feel like she's like I might redact this. I was going to say that I feel like she's resilient in that like people kind of keep throwing things at her, and like you said she'll keep going, but when you started describing the way that you were using the word tenacious, I was like that's just describing the same thing that I was going to say.
Right. Like I feel like, yeah, Alyssa's more like, like Shanae has that gumption. She regains her energy. Alyssa's just kind of like she's going because she has to see it through. But it's
Alyssa
not
kind
like
Alyssa
what's
kind of keeps running at zero.
yeah, she's going. She doesn't exactly believe in herself. She's just kind of there because she's got to get there. Like we talk about how she's not doing this out of love for the career. She's doing it because she believes that the ends have to justify the means, because if they don't, then it means she did all of this for nothing. But that's not the kind of tenacity that Yui's interested in. She likes Shin-Ae's tenacity. She likes the girls with a little fight. And
She
I feel really gross saying that, especially with what this topic is,
uh
because
it's
ugh,
Yui Yui doesn't want somebody who is going to take what you throw at them and endorse. You want somebody who is going to flip what you throw at them on its head
yeah,
because that's what
and
Yui did.
yeah, And I think that's very much what she sees in Shin-Ae. And I think had the formal gone the way that Yui wanted, that's probably what would have happened. Like had Shin-Ae been, God, like talking about this is really gross, and I want to like do it in a way that's like, like not gross and triggery, but like had Shin-Ae been introduced to Gun in the way that Yui actually intended for them to, actually meet. I think that's very much what it would have been. Is like we saw the way that Shin-Ae fought with Song-chol and the way she even fought with Yui. That was probably the intention because men like Gun, that's what they wanted, like that kind of and it's
And
so
I think he
gross to
himself,
even think about. Or what's that?
I think didn't he himself also comment on how she was spunky?
I'm not actually sure. I know like he called her a cutie. I know he like commented on her appearance, and I think he did say something about like when she was when he was like introducing her to people and she was swearing and stuff. He definitely said something about, I don't know what it was exactly that he said though.
Like about her personality and about how she kind of had that like less polished, more fight in her.
Yeah, something like that. It's just, and like, like that's what I think is like, she saw in Shanae a girl who will put up a fight, and that kind of idea that like, oh, he'd like that, a girl who, fights back a little. And it's, again, it's really gross to say this, and like I hate even saying it out loud, but like legitimately I think that's, you know, what it was. And
And
like, oh, go on.
and I was gonna say we have seen, and this is gonna briefly bridge into Fast Pass. We've seen through Alyssa that um, the girls don't necessarily have to be for Gun himself,
Hmm.
where he can pass them off to other people. It's kind of unclear whether like certain girls go to Gun or not, like the ones that he likes best or not.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's something about like Yui knew what Gun was gonna take interest in, and she
Hmm.
dolled up Shanae.
Right. And I pulled up my essay little post about it too, because that's the thing is, when we're first reading it, we're told that, you know, she's how did Yui say it? She's like, I thought of him when I had him in mind when I
The
told you to
dress
wear this or whatever. Right. And
designed.
how it's specifically that dress with the low cut back, and how we've seen him put his hand very low on Alyssa's back. And now in the fast pass, we've seen that he did the exact same thing to Shanae. I will say, I very resolutely feel like Shanae was intended specifically for Gun.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you ask? What did Yui give date rape drugs to Songchul? First off, that was like a weird secret between Yui and Songchul. Secondly, for all we know, maybe Yui thought it would be funny if Songchul got to her first. Again, that's really gross to say. Um, Thirdly, honestly, I get the feeling that like that family is a little gross, and you know what? They probably don't always care about that kind of stuff now, do you think? Again, really gross to say that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but I mean,
Um,
we have confirmation that this family is like that. We have
mhm,
the articles about Young-Chul Kim. We have Sang-Chul's behavior at the formal and likely at the
mhm,
masquerade because um, even though the person there doesn't 100% match Sang-Chul's design later on, especially in the height, Kimchi did say that she edited his design before he was introduced at the job interview. so he had a different original design, so I do think that was Sang-chul. And yeah, so we know that Young-chul was responsible for many assaults himself personally. We know that Gun Kim is responsible for, at the very least, trafficking girls. And know that Sang-chul tried to drug and assault girls at parties multiple times, and we saw the way that he acted with Shin-Ae, so I think it's decently safe to say that they are like that.
Right. And like, just like, I feel like most people would be like, the idea of like a father and son both, the same girl in one night, but honestly, with their family, like I said, I would not put that past them. Because like, that question comes up, like Gun knew that Songchul had taken Shin-Ae away. I think I feel like somebody put it in a really awful way, like that after dinner meant or something. It was a really gross comment, like looking at it that way. But that was literally, oh, that's, yeah, I'm looking at the chat right now. Um, I'm going to go ahead and read your comment if you don't mind. Maybe part of why she was eager to let Song Chol assault Shin-Ae when she was, wait, I can't read this. Assault. Ugh. I'm going to reread this again. I'm having a really bad night talking,
Would you like
guys.
me to read it?
Yes, please. I'm not reading well.
Okay, yeah. So maybe part of why you was eager to let Sang-chul assault Shin-Ae when Shin-Ae was the after party treat for Gun. Maybe Yui wanted to take indirect jabs at Gun's power and desires away from him, like, haha, Gun, your kid ate first and you're getting his leftovers. To kind of footnote on that, the end of the comic, extra sick though. Not sure how psychologically dark we're going into the rest of the story. And when this comment originally graced my eyes, I'm included in the screenshot, and my exact response was, "Ew, ew, ew."
And I really think that is a good possibility. Like it's the fact that Yui gave Sangchul those drugs and specifically Gun wasn't supposed to know. It feels so very much to me like, because she hates these men, like she's working with them, but she probably really hates them. The idea of her, like the idea that she's arranging this, she's orchestrating this, and it just kind of being something so funny to her, that it just makes so much sense to me. Like I resolutely believe that Shin-Ae was specifically intended for Gun. Like it makes so much sense to me.
And I was going to say it, but Solidarity also put it in the chat, where on the topic of like Yui wanted it to be a secret, Good didn't know what Sangchul was going to do, and that maybe Sangchul's job is to ensure that the girls are prepped for him, which that is what I thought of at Yui giving Sangchul the drugs and basically being like, you can have your fun, sure that she's ready in time, like make sure she gets where she needs to go in time.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Sangchul was basically like her keeper until it was time, prepping her.
No, that makes a lot of sense actually. And again, like it makes me wonder how many times this has happened, like where Song Chul himself is actually involved, because it's very clear at this point that the Kim formal is a front for this. Like this is an annual event, and we know that lots of women attend all the time. Like those girls at the very beginning when Shin-Ae, was around and she looks absolutely haggard and they're like, how did you get here? Like there's an emphasis on the fact that very pretty young girls,
Yeah.
it's clearly a front for this. For what was that?
And they're also all talking about, Mr. Kim likes all types of women. There's tons of girls there. people are joking, like, is this your new wife? Like, it's clear that this is a recurring theme. And
Right.
know about it. Like, they probably don't know exactly what's happening in those back rooms, but people understand how the Kims are viewing these women that come to their parties.
Right. And it's just it's such an insidious thing. Like, once you realize how dark the formal actually is, the fact that, this is an event that people are literally vying to get into, because I think so many of them don't really know what is happening behind closed doors. For most people, it's, like a very elite, exclusive event to get into. I remember it being emphasized that the masquerade is something that, so many people can go to, because, like Rika was able to go and invite her friends. Whereas the masquerade is like, you have to have that invitation. For Alyssa to attend, Yui had to pull strings, even though
Yeah.
she herself is an idol. Like, these people are literally vying to get into this. And then, like, we saw the aftermath of that formal when Alyssa left that morning, and how it was rowdy. We, Gun Kim shows up while Shin-Ae and Alyssa are sitting around, and he convinces the bartender to give these underage girls, he knows they're underage girls, alcohol. And, like, the first time you read it, you're kind of like, oh, that's kind of weird. Because, like, oh, he wants them to think he's cool. And then, like, once you really start to get that grasp of what his character is really like, you're like, oh, he's like that gross, creepy 25-year-old who keeps going to the high school house parties and is always supplying the alcohol for all the young underage kids, hoping that he's gonna, like, get with one of those girls and she gets sloppy drunk.
Ugh.
And then you realize that's exactly what it is. And it's just, it's disgusting. Like, even like the first time you read it, there's something so creepy and smarmy about him. But at the time, it just kind of feels smarmy. It's like, in the same way that, like, you know how, like, effective Yui's gaslighting is, you can't quite pinpoint what it is about Gun Kim until, like, you start thinking about it a little more. Like, it's the way he talks. It's like, why are you going around and calling Shin-Ae honey? You just met her. But also, here's the thing that really sealed the deal for me, and why I think Shin-Ae was there for him, specifically him, is he immediately recognized her.
Yes. He knew.
He saunters up to that bar where Alyssa and Shin-Ae are sitting, and he immediately knows who she is. How does he know that? How does he know who she is? Because, like, you could try to argue that he knows everybody who's at that formal, but he doesn't. Because, like, I know I just said that this is an exclusive event, but it's like exclusive in the sense that, they're probably like, is she a hot girl? Okay, yeah, let's invite her. Is she somebody who matters? Yeah, let's invite her. How does he know?
It's exclusive in the fact that it's smaller, like,
Right,
no
right,
his friends. Rika's dad can't get her in. But it's like, yeah, like you said, like, they don't know everyone there.
right,
And there's a lot of people there to be preyed upon.
right. So, like, Yui has to have shown him a photo of her or something. But it also, like, begs the question, like I mean, I guess, like, the the safest option that we have is that, there's video footage from work, like some kind of CCTV that she could have used. Because I know, like, the darkest theory that I've seen about it is that, like, she recorded Shin-Ae undressing at Kosuke's apartment. I'm not saying that that one is, like, one I believe. I'm just saying that that is, like, the darkest theory about this that I have seen before and read and went, that's a horrifying thought. But the
Uh,
point is that Yui must have, you know, put Shin-Ae onto his radar, you know?
And Solidarity also just points
Oh,
whoever the
I
youngest girl that's sitting insecurely postured in his radar settings.
yeah, that would also do it.
Yeah. And like and so like with the formal and with the way that Shin-Ae was there for Gun Kim, so like at this point, Yui is she basically seems to be like giving these women to the Kims and letting them basically show the realities of the world to these girls, appeasing the Kims for herself as well, and like just once again like watching that dynamic that she is so familiar with and resents and believes is the dynamic of the world play itself out over and over again, both for
Mhm.
of her being able to reaffirm for herself that her um, vindictiveness is warranted, and to kind of have that like sink or swim moment for a lot of these women, and with Shin-Ae being basically the prime target because, as you said, she was there for Gun. He's hosting the formal. He's the person vaguely at the top of this traffic ring, or at least pretty high up in it. Um, you know, it's his event. She is the guest of honor, and the only way that she actually gets out of it is that someone comes and saves her. Where like these other women, they most if not all of them were not that lucky. And we see that with Shin-Ae and Alyssa where um they're Alyssa, we do see her in the formal get whisked away by various people. Um but we were supposed to see her like
We were
kind of
supposed to see more of that parallel that never really got to play.
yeah, we were supposed to see her kind of in those back rooms with people, and I don't know exactly what the details were, but it was supposed to be very paralleled to like it sounds like how Shanae was taken away by Sangchul.
Mhm.
And the thing is that like when Alyssa disappeared, no one really batted an eye. No one looked for her. And part of that is that, she is not someone who's very open. She's not someone who built very strong relationships. When she disappears and she's like, oh, I just have to go for work things, they're kind of like, she's always gone for work things. But it's like not a single person at any point came looking for her. Not her sister, not her boyfriend in really name only, but at that point he was still acting like one. Um, Not, her old friend, not any of the professional people that she had talked to throughout the night. Um, she's there on her own. She's there like with her sister, but obviously her parents don't care what happens to her, where she goes, what she does. And like just no one was looking for her. And we see in in Fast Pass 243 how that ultimately plays out for her, where it didn't get that far at the formal, but it certainly was set up to go there. And because like like that's the end game for them. That's the end goal. That's where these women end up. And the reason that Shin-Ae was able to get out of it was, here we have Shin-Ae in a very similar situation, except she's drugged. She's the main target. She's with Sang-chul. She's being prepped for Gun Kim. She was brought there by Yui. She's all alone. No one knows where she is. But, Meg sees the vial and realizes that something's happened to her. And she, sets off this kind of like rescue mission where she tries to get Kousuke, but Kousuke initially doesn't believe her. And then she gets Noel, and Noel convinces Kousuke. And then all three of them start running around this party like madmen looking for her. And they find her trying to fight back. But realistically, with the state that Shin-Ae was in, if those three hadn't been looking for her, they probably would have just had to wait for, things to kind of play their course and for her to run out of energy. If they wanted to wait it out. And who knows what would have happened to her. Where it was
Right.
that like she was lucky enough to have people in that party, in that space, who both noticed that she was gone, figured out why, and cared enough to try to find her. But these other women don't.
Like when you think about it, isn't it extra depressing to think about that? Like I really wonder how it would have been different if it had played the way Kimchi had wanted to write it originally, just because, Meg was such a big part of how, you know, Shin-Ae got out of her situation. Like, I wonder if that would have played the same. Or if that's just one of those things where, it's neither here nor there, because what we have is that Meg was the person who helped.
Mhm.
Um, but like you said, for Shin-Ae, like the big difference is that she does have people, and it's the fact that even though she's not, she doesn't think that she's a very open person, but she's open enough, and she had confided enough in Noel that night, and Kosuke had taken enough interest in her that night to care. It was the fact that he was already with projecting Noel onto her that made him care enough about her. And it was also the fact that perhaps that night was one that mirrored another incident that he has lived. How's that for a segue?
Yeah, and so one of the other theories about the Kim formal is that, so we have this whole background of Yui is testing Kosuke to see if he carries the same insidious traits as all these other men, especially the Kims. Shin-Ae is at the formal Forgoon. The formal and the Kim family are part of this whole trafficking ring, and this is what they do. This is the world that they live in. And Kosuke at the formal has very strong reactions to everything that's going on around Shin-Ae and the Kims, despite the fact that he overtly kind of tries to act like nothing is wrong, and especially at this point in the story, often doesn't show being phased about things. And so the kind of theory is that the Kim formal and what happened or what attempted to happen at the Kim formal is a mirror of what of an event that happened with Kosuke in college. So for um for kind of a brief timeline and kind of recap of Kosuke's time in college, we know that he went through his rebellious phase, that he made a bunch of friends, that he seems to have been a real person for once, which I think is very much related to um, Noel's institutionalization, where in the
Mhm.
210 flashback, Kosuke doesn't have his earring yet. He's, got his normal hair, and he's 16 when that fight happened. And then he graduates at 20, so that only leaves he graduates with his master's at 20. And when he's 20 with Meg, we see that he's already out of his rebellious phase, which realistically puts it between about 17 to 19, um, which lines up very closely with Noel being institutionalized for almost 2 years. If he's, it's only possible between 16 to 20. Um, and at the beginning of 16, at the end of 20, he's not in the rebellious phase. Um, Especially because it looks like the fight went down probably kind of soon before Kosuke's birthday. But with Noel away, Kosuke likely, for the first time, kind of felt free enough to have a personality, and that's why he pulled away, and that's how he got his own friends, had his own personality, made those real bonds. Um, but then Yui likely let Noel out of the institution to bring Kosuke back to her because she needs Kosuke by her side. And then that seems to have created a very stark personality change in Kosuke and brought him back to this person who is kind of rigid, not very in tune with the emotions of himself and others, particularly in being willing to believe and view them Um, and very much aligned again more so with his family and the elites and such than before. So um we see later on in the more recent episodes that when Kosuke was in college, there's some sort of event that happens with him and a girl at the school where she comes to him and looking very dejected and says that she needs someone to help her, and she's begging him to believe her and that she's not looking for money. And Yujing is begging him to believe this girl's side of things, and they say that they thought that Kosuke could help. And the way that we get to this is probably related to similar things that happen at the Kim formal is when Yujing says that sentiment about someone that she knew a long time ago went through something similar to what Shin-Ae had gone through, and she wouldn't wish it on anybody. And so that's what kind of tipped people off to the fact that this is probably the incident that made Kosuke afraid um, of kind of like what would come out of his college friend group. And um,
Right, because he's very, very, very adamant that Eugene does not get close to Shin-Ae because there's something he does not want her to reveal to Shin-Ae. And it's something that like he's clearly guarding with his life. He's like super terrified of her finding out what it is, which means, it's got to be something that he is so deeply ashamed of. And like I feel like it has to be shame because like why else would he be so afraid of her finding out about this?
right, we're like,
And
no,
or
yeah,
and also like that connection to the fact that if it's the fact that somebody he was close to was drugged and he didn't believe it, and Shin-Ae went through that same experience, like because why else would he not want a 17-year-old girl to know? Like why else would he care what this 17-year-old girl thinks of something he did in his past? Has to be A, something he's ashamed of, but especially B, because it relates to her in some way. And because he projects Noel onto her at all times, he's kind of, like he can't let her down because like she's his do-over. He can't fail again. Like he can't screw this up a second time.
yeah. And so like back in college, we see, he says, the thought of it is preposterous. Only someone with a sick mind would do that. It's a dangerous accusation. And, she's begging and saying that, she was told that he could help, and he turns her away. And then it seems like the panels are of a funeral. And so it's
Mhm.
likely that the girl experienced assault and attempted to come to Kosuke for help, possibly because it involved someone in like an elite circle, and they thought that Kosuke, with his connections, would be the only person who might understand, who might be able to help them. And he didn't believe her and turned her away. And it seems like the reason he didn't believe her is because at the end of his rebellious phase, Yui kept feeding him again that information about the world that, people are going to try to leech off of you. People are going to be dishonest. People are going to try to tear you down. So he doesn't believe it, but he also likely didn't want to believe it. He probably didn't want it to be true. Where, to him, there's no proof, there's no reason to risk himself. If he knows the people involved or is close to them, then, he would have to do something.
Right.
And he has to decide whether or not this, common girl or someone in his social circle is the liar, to have to possibly take action as this, like still a teenager, because, he graduated at 20, he's under 20, and having to wrestle with all of that and what to do. And he may have felt that it was slightly true, um, and had trouble accepting it, which is
Mhm.
probably what happened. Um,
Right.
but he, at that time, he didn't help. He didn't react. He wasn't someone that saved her. He turned her away when she came begging, and it had monumental consequences, a life lost that can never be regained, in addition to what was experienced that he could have possibly changed the outcome of. She might, it might not have ended that way had he listened to her, had he believed her. And so at the Kim formal, he interestingly instinctively reacts the same way that he did back then. And when Meg comes to
Right.
him and says, my my sister's old friend, I think she's in trouble, she's with Sanctual, I found this, I think she's going to get hurt. Like something bad is going to happen to her if we don't find her. And Kosuke's immediately like, have you really stooped this low that you would threaten her, that you're trying to make me believe this? And to be fair, Meg was not great around Kosuke for most of the comic, which is not something I'm going to get
Right.
deep
I,
into now. He was not a trust.
yeah.
Um, but he does, he doesn't even entertain the thought. He doesn't, and he really does the same thing where he believes the source of the information is untrustworthy. Therefore, he doesn't consider the possibility that the information could be true. Because that's the same thing that he did with the girl back then, where he sees Yui's words of everyone's trying to latch on to people like us, and she's begging, please believe me, I don't want any money, I don't want anything, she said that you could help me. And Eugene saying, you're consider her side of the story, and he's like, this is preposterous, it's impossible, it's a dangerous accusation. And believing that because the narrator is not reliable in his eyes, that the accusations can't be either. So he does that same thing with Meg, and with Meg it's a little bit more founded. um
Right. Like he has seen Meg literally try to actually hurt Shin-Ae, like in front of him.
yeah
He has seen how she talks about Shin-Ae, how she talks to Shin-Ae. Like on one level, like if we disregard everything we know about his past, like he's not, like you said, his reaction is not at all unfounded. Like if like your crazy stalker, like the stalker who is constantly harassing and assaulting you comes up to you and tells you, hey, my sister's old friend has been drugged and I need you to help me. You're going to think, oh my God, she's trying to drag me off to her room so that she can assault me again. I'm not going to fall for this.
yeah and
So,
so
right,
like it's way honestly way more understandable the second time. But he does discount the information, so that's the parallel there.
right,
and
right.
and then what changes is when the proof comes out, when Noel gets involved, when they have the vial of drugs, when basically some tangibility is there that it is true, Shin-Ae is in danger, it is the Kim's fault, like she is being targeted. And so like as soon as he sings that, he believes them, and he does the complete opposite of what he did before, and he joins the search team. He goes into action. I usually say springs into action, but Kosuke doesn't super do that at any point in his life. But for Kosuke in this context, he pretty much springs into action, is running around, and he seems very panicked. He knows that something is wrong. And throughout the whole formal, he's been very wary around the Kims and wary about them being around Shin-Ae and Alyssa, and he's playing it off. And, he's being like, oh, respect your elders, respect your host. But he has all of these worried looks throughout the formal. And especially,
I'd
oh,
I'd like to interject that point where Gun and when like they announced that Shanae's been hired and they pulled that whole like, oh, she's practically part of the family
yeah,
now, and how both Noel and Kosuke react because they know the Kims. Like
yeah,
even if they're not close to them, they know the reputation that precedes them, which I think is really important because when Kosuke finds out that Songchul took her,
yes,
yeah,
that he gets worried. And like you said, like as much as he's trying to play off that there's nothing wrong, he knows that there's something very wrong with the Kims and very wrong with Shin-Ae being here. And very wrong with the way that Yui has presented her, and the way that Yui has dressed her, and the way people are looking at her, and the way people are interacting with her, and what she must be here for. We're like, it's not so much consciously, or like explicitly in his mind, but he knows and he feels it and he's worried. So as soon as he gets this tangible proof that the Kims are, Shin-Ae is not safe and she is with them, he, he like like I said, like he essentially for himself springs into action. And I
he's not going to ignore it this time. He's actually going to take action. He's not
yeah.
going to just like sit by for once.
And ultimately, in this event, he's often trying to redeem the way that he treated Noel with Shin-Ae, he's trying to redeem the way that he treated that girl in college, where, you know, Shin-Ae has been drugged, she's being offered up to Gun Kim, and someone is coming to save her. And whether by happenstance or by design, Kousuke was intended to be the savior that night, right? Everyone came to him to try to help with Shin-Ae. Him joining the search party is what really gets it going. He's the one who finds her in the cabinet. Like by design of the night, was intended to be the savior and to redeem himself from what happened that day all those years ago, where he turned that girl away, and it ended so badly. And he wasn't, like you said, he wasn't going to fail this time. He was going to redeem himself and he was going to save her. But the interesting thing is that that's not what happens. He tries so hard and he believes it this time. He runs after her, he finds her, he, you know, is likely having all of these callbacks to before, because like you said, he was so worried, and something set off as soon as this started happening, where that concept of like, it's happening again and I need to stop it this time, I need to make a different choice this time. I can't change what happened then, I can't bring back that girl, but I can make different choices this time and I can save this girl and make up for it. But he
And I think too, something that is really different about it too is the fact that when they came to Kousuke, it was something that had already transpired. They were coming to
Mhm.
him for help afterwards. For him, this was a moment to try to prevent it.
Yeah,
This was the opportunity to try to protect her from actually experiencing what this girl experienced.
yeah, to stop it all before it happens in the first place.
Right.
And yeah, and so he is trying, and like I said, he gets so far, but in reality, he wasn't, he was the last person who took action, and he wasn't the one who actually ended up saving her. Noel was the one who convinced him to join. Meg was the one who came with the drugs. Noel is the one who, you know, punched Central. Um, um, he's the one who grabbed her off the balcony. Well, Kosuke grabbed her, but he also fell off. That's it. Kosuke grabbed her, but he also fell. You know,
Right.
where he was trying so hard to redeem himself and be the savior, and he gets so close, but he doesn't follow all the way through, which isn't his intention. He's not trying. Um,
Right. But
even
his
by
mother sure isn't, doing much to help him along,
oh
is she?
oh no, she is certainly not. And so even with being given this second chance at the event, which like it's kind of wild that is even a thing that can happen to him, right? That he can be given a second chance at something that big, at something that horrible, and have the opportunity to, not that you can actually redeem what happened, like now that it changes what happened first time, but like this concept of redeeming himself from what happened in the past and saving the girl this time. He didn't end up the savior and he failed again. Whereas instead, Noel was the savior, which is something that, I mean, Kosuke was shaken up by, and Yui certainly did not intend.
I mean, and like, I guess, to be fair to Kosuke, I think on some level we could argue that, to some degree, he did succeed in the sense that he learned from his past mistake,
Yeah,
while he still did need to be, he did still need that confirmation in that he saw the vial and that he had a more credible source. But like we said, part of it was that it didn't help that his source was somebody who was like is so far from credible, you know, like in no way could Meg have been credible to him without Noel backing her up, you know. Um Obviously, like, he no, in his eyes, yes, it's a failure. But I do think in the grand scheme of Kosuke and the fact that we are watching, like, I'm pretty sure, didn't Kimchi say that Kosuke's basically, like, his arc has already started, like, he's already going through his character
Yeah.
development. We know it's going to be a slow process, but for us as readers, especially being able to look back, um and especially since seeing that flashback and looking back and comparing them, we can look back at that at the very least and say, you know what, though, the thing is, you did make that right choice. Were you
Yeah.
able to be the hero? No, but he made that choice. And it's a
Yeah.
choice that he probably would not have made, you know, like, that he didn't make when he, you know, he didn't make that choice then, and he made that now. And that, you know, that does show that growth. Um
Absolutely. That
and right.
it's that theme in his character arc where like you said, like he's not there yet. He's still very
Mhm.
much wrestling with everything. He's grappling, he's having a hard time, he's struggling, but he is getting like he's coming so much farther and like he has that guilt about what happened in college. He has that guilt about the way that he treated Noel. He has these notions that the Kims are sleazy now, where in college he was saying, that's preposterous. Like only a sick person would
Mhm.
like that. And now he's like, maybe these people are sick people. Um,
He's
and
had a lot more enlightenment since
yeah,
then.
so like he's not at the point where he's, the angel of the story, the clairvoyant, the everything is fine and dandy. He's healed all of his trauma, he's redeemed all of his past, he's you know
Oof.
but he, like you said, like he is on that journey, and he like even if he wasn't the hero, even if he wasn't the savior, he himself has come so far. And so like that is
Right.
not what Yui was intending. She likely was intending for him to not have any like positives happening in that event and just feel very about it, and like save Shin-Ae, but solely out of that guilt. And
Mhm.
like um and then that like she could probably use that as the like, when you were away from me things went so wrong and things were so horrible for you,
Mhm.
but now that I'm here, look what happened. You saved her, you're the hero, you my boy, that kind of thing. um
Right. Ugh.
where like it really went the opposite, where he didn't he didn't so like himself get the saved outcome, get the get the good ending, get the heroes. uh,
Right.
and he had trouble accepting the way that it went down, and finding people to blame, and kind of reverted to typical Kosuke at the end. But throughout it, he was worried about her. He put aside his biases about Meg to listen to what was happening to her. He put all that effort in. He wore the black team jacket, like he
When I
oh
was thinking too about how when you look at it as being a parallel to that past event, it makes that after, you know, like, that scene in the hospital makes so much more sense, because that was something that was so hard for me to reconcile with for so long, because, like, it didn't make sense to me because it's like, Kosuke treats her so bad all of the time. Why is he such a good little attendant? You know, like, it was something. It wasn't that, like, I don't know. It was just, it's something that I struggled with a lot, because it was one of those things where it's just like on some level I get it, but and now that you know that, like, he has so much guilt about this person that he didn't believe in the past, who reached a point where it sounds like, she took her own life. Like, he's making the point, or he's making a point to ensure that Shin-Ae does not feel alone,
yeah,
where, like, she doesn't wake up scared and alone in a hospital room that she doesn't recognize, wondering how she got here. Like, he doesn't know how far things got when she was alone with Songchul. She doesn't know how bad he doesn't know how bad things might have gotten. Like he is really trying to assuage that guilt. And like, I mean, I don't think he's doing it in the whole like I feel so guilty for what I did in the past, because I do think he genuinely cares about making sure that he's there for her. Like he genuinely knows that she is going to be in that kind of vulnerable position. But he also does it in that very Kosuke fashion where, like he's not exactly letting her have any say, because, like when Noel comes by, he's like, she doesn't need to see you go away. You're going to make things worse, even though it's clear that she wants to see him. But, it's Kosuke and he's going to Kosuke. But it's just like, it's really interesting to see how, like, Kosuke just, he's so fascinating to me. Like
And,
at that time, I hated him so much. I was like, you bastard, let her talk to him. And now I'm like, you can see how like he's clearly he in his mind, he really does believe that Noel dropped him. Like he doesn't understand like how that could have happened. Like in his mind, Noel is clearly so strong that like pulling up two bodies should have been like super super easy for him. Like I want to see you do that, Kosuke. You go and haul their asses up, buddy. But like he's always projecting his own feelings onto Noel. So like obviously in his mind, yeah, Noel, he did this on purpose. So like on some level, I get this, but it's just all it's that complexity there, those layers. Where it's like, hey Kosuke, hey, come here. Lay down on this little couch. Tell me about your dreams. Let's talk about this for a little bit.
tell me about it. Um, but like you said, with the formal versus what happened in college, like you said, in college, everything came to him after it happened. Everything was already said and done, and it was after he left that girl alone that she likely, like you said, took her own life, and it's over at that point. You can't fix it anymore. You can't bring her back. You can't change anything. Whereas at the formal, not only was he trying to prevent it from happening before it actually happened to Shin-Ae, but if he knows that the aftermath of the events was what, and like not having someone in the aftermath was what drove that girl to that place of, hopelessness and feeling alone, that he, like you said, like he wants to make sure that Shin-Ae has this presence next to her. He wants to watch how she reacts in the following hours. He wants to be there to believe her and like do all those things for her that he didn't do back then, and prevent her from getting to that point, so that the same thing that happened doesn't happen again. And like you said, it's not solely out of guilt. Like obviously what has tipped him off to the way that he should be reacting to this is the guilt. Um but he doesn't want that to happen to her because he doesn't want to see it happen to her. Like it's not just that he doesn't want to be the bad guy two times in a row.
Right.
It's doesn't want to see another girl go through it.
Right. Like despite what happens with Noel, like it is really touching. Like I said, it's like really complex. I've got some complicated feelings about that moment, but it is touching. Like it's one of those moments that shows that Kosuke is human. He just really struggles to emote in a way that is sensible, I guess.
He's
Like he's very emotionally stunted. We know that. And when he's dealing with like that guilt of something that I think it's safe to say traumatized him. Like he's
Yeah,
clearly repressed it. We saw like how
his
it came
craves.
flooding, right, like it literally came flooding back to him when he went to visit Noel at the hospital. Like he's traumatized by what happened. um
And
I
it
just lost
like
my train of thought.
I was gonna say it hinges kind of upon this train of like Kosuke is always trying, and he usually, like when he has good intentions, and he just often fails in the way that he executes. Where like he had good intentions with Shin-Ae at the hospital, where he was like, I don't want anything else hurting this girl. I want to make sure that she's okay. I want to make sure that she does not end up in that same place that that girl back in college did. Like I want to keep an eye on this. Meanwhile, she wants so badly to see Noel. Like, when she finally meets Noel on the balcony, that's, when she finally breaks down and cries and feels comforted, and she's, reaching out for him. She's been reaching out for him all night. But to Kosuke, Noel is another potential source of hurt. He
Mhm.
robbed them, he's the reason that she's in the hospital. And so he has that good intention, and it's just that the way that it's coming through doesn't resonate and doesn't hit. And like a
Hey,
lot
look
of
at that, Kosuke. You are like your father.
ah, all he in a very 212 way, he is so much like Rand, isn't he?
Ah, God bless him. But yeah, like I really do look forward to seeing more of that past, because it really does feel like that's got to be a parallel of that. And
Yes.
it
I
just it has to be like it feels like the way Kimchi presented that to us, the fact that Eugene specifically said that, she knows somebody who went through that. And it's that scene where we see Eugene screaming at Kosuke,
yes.
like, you this has to be the person that she's talking about. Like, that emotional reaction to Kosuke, and why she is so affected by Kosuke. Like, like we talk about
Yeah.
this a lot, how, Yujing says that she doesn't care about Kosuke and she doesn't like him, but I'm pretty sure deep down there's a part of her that, like, she would not treat him the way she does if she didn't care. It's just
Yeah.
that the version
She
of Kosuke she cares about is the version that hasn't been seen since Noel was released from the institution.
Yeah, she
And
hates what she's
yeah.
seeing from him, but she cares about her friend, and she honestly likely misses him.
Mhm.
She people being like, what why have you changed so starkly? Like, you're not acting like the same person that we met. Like, she wants that Kosuke to heal and come back, and cares about him and wants to lead him there. But the part that she can't stand is him getting in his own way ultimately, and like the way that he is acting
Right.
now.
Like, she knows that Kosuke exists.
Yes,
She's seen him, she was friends with him. She knows he's in there. She just doesn't know how to access him. She doesn't know how to pull
exactly.
him out.
And
Um
like with the formal too, like Yujing that whole time is watching. She's watching Shin-Ae. She starts really like, I don't remember if she starts when Shin-Ae is at the bar around Goon or after the dance, but we see that flashback of Yujing and Manlai watching Shin-Ae dance with Kosuke, and Manlai has that like sad look on her face, likely that
mhm.
she's remembering what happened to the last girl in one of these kind of situations. Yujing is very like kind of like she's got her eye on what's going on. She's watching, she's ready, like, and she seems to be kind of following Shanae, like not like super strictly, but like she's got her eye out. She has an idea of where Shanae is, what's happening, and that's how she is ultimately the person who runs and gives CPR to Shanae, because she's been around Shanae the whole night and she's been
Al-
worried.
Also, she had literally just come from down, or she had come down the stairs from where Shanae was up at.
Hmm.
So I think she probably hadn't gotten far when that fall happened and they called for somebody who can do yeah. I think she
Yeah.
probably hadn't gotten far, because she's that person who runs into Kosuke, and that's how he's like, oh well,
Yep.
this disguise works after all. So
Ugh.
that was like a really fun little thing to realize, like when I went back and reread, I'm like, it's Eugene.
Yeah, she was all around the formal, and she's harder to pick out because she had the different hair. Her
Hmm.
ability to draw her facial structure wasn't as good as it is now.
Right.
Where like features were a bit muddier, but like that it's Yujing, and she pops up quite a few times around the formal around Shin-Ae, and she always has that look of like kind of like this girl shouldn't be here, and there's a reason that she's here, like that, like she is also remembering what these events are like, what the people at these events are like, what has happened to people at these events in the past, and
Something
like
else too is because it's such an exclusive event. Um, well, we have to assume that the people who are the people who are in attendance are probably a lot of the upper crust elite,
mhm.
people. There probably are some more of the like quote quote commoner type because like I mean, Gun can't really, run through all of the elite girls without, people talking. But the point is, I feel like obviously Shin-Ae has to stick out because she clearly is not of the same class as these people. Even
Yeah,
after Noel does her makeup really well, by the way, I cannot do my makeup very well at all. So Noel, hey, what are your rates? Can you help me out? Um
shout out, yeah, nowhere,
hey,
which I subscribe.
me too. Um like
Catch
like
myself.
Shanae, she doesn't have that same demeanor as girls, as like women of that higher social caliber, like it's that way that they
Feels out of
carry
place.
themselves. It's that confidence. She doesn't have that, like she's going to stick out even once she has the makeup and she blends in, and especially somebody like Eugene who reads body language. Like she's an investigative reporter. This is the kind of stuff she looks for. These are the details she reads. And like when you've got like your little nobody girl having her Cinderella dance with Kosuke, who never dances with people, like yeah, you're going to notice that, and you're going to notice like she's out here with Kosuke, she's out here hanging out with that pop idol Alyssa, she's making the rounds with Gun Kim, Yui knows her. It's like all those things. Yeah, like Eugene, she
Yeah.
knows what to look for.
Yeah. And that ultimately, like you said, like Shanae stood out a ton at the formal. And that also ties into like the difference in how the night went for her versus Alyssa, where like, Alyssa gets swept away by the fans, swept away by the Vogue photographer, and like no one really bats an eye. She's putting on her smile, she's keeping her discomfort hidden and, secretive.
Mm-hmm.
Is how that's ultimately a lot of how these things thrive, where like people feel like they can't say anything about what's happening or how they're really feeling, or that they don't have power over the situation and kind of have to put on that face, and
Mm-hmm.
people don't notice, and people like the Kims are able to get away with it behind those closed doors. But
Right.
Shanae just stuck out like a sore thumb so much, and there was so clearly something targeted about her presence there at the night that even Yujing, who didn't know her at that point, was on the case and like looking out for her and keeping an eye on, and like it ties back into that point of like Shanae was so lucky that she had all these people looking out for her, because these the Kim family is a group of insidious men, and what they do and the people they're involved with are like some of the nastiest possible. And they likely do this very often, to the point where, like we said, like Yui tests Kosuke to see if he is the same way, if he will behave the same way, if he has those traits too, because all he's an elite man, and the elite men are all like this. That's how it is, that's how it works, that's how her experience was. And like it's just they have, and I mean it's basically confirmed in Euging's articles, where like they have victimized so many people and
Mm-hmm.
shaped this world into that, and like that worldview that Yui has, they have created that kind of world. And that's
Like
also
the fact that Gun literally works in the entertainment
yes.
industry, like it's the investors. It's not like his friends. It's the people who invest in like it's the people who are literally giving their money to keep funding these artists. It's like, do you want your group to go far? You've got to give us a little something. Do Alyssa, do
Yeah.
you want to be one of those girls? Do you want to be plastered on all of those billboards? Do you want to be the girl who's on all of those designer labels? This is how you do it. And it's like we know that in like real K-pop that is a thing too. It's like like we know unfortunately this is a real thing in like all entertainment industries. And it's such a horrifying, gross, insidious, dark thing that just like operates under the surface. And that's like I think that's what makes Alyssa's situation so terrifying, is that in that entertainment industry, it is the norm. Like when she's parodying what are probably Yui's words and she says it's nothing, it's just business. Like I know that she's saying this to convince herself that, this is just business because she has to. Because like, like you say with Yui, breaking girls, because either you break and you shatter and you fall apart, or you get broken and you rebuild yourself. That's what Alyssa's doing. She has to tell herself this so that she can keep going, because her alternative is like, what? You fall apart, you know?
Yeah.
How,
The only
like,
option,
what was that?
I was gonna say the only other option right now for Alyssa is to break, and she can't afford to do that.
Right. It's just that is the norm for her. Like Gunn runs that, and if it isn't him, it's somebody else. Like he probably has his ring, but there's probably somebody else with their own ring, and
And,
that's like the horrifying. Ugh.
and that's so much of what Eugene is pointing out, where like the exact situation that Shin-Ae found herself in is not the same situation that girl in college did. The exact situation that Alyssa's in is not the same situation as Shin-Ae or the college girl. The exact people who victimized them, the exact circumstances, the time, the place, you know, the circle, it's different, but it's a theme, and it's being enabled in this world, and it's being enabled by the way that they prey on, the uncomfortable girl in the corner who sticks out, the way that they prey on the girl who, they know will keep quiet, who will smile and appease them, the way that they prey on the girl who, just anyone that they think they can get away with it, the people who need something, the people who feel like they can't say no, the people who, just any of the above. And that it's not that, there's Gun Kim and he's the big villain and he's the one, and if you take him out, it's going to stop. It's that it's this generational ring, it's multiple of them, it's this whole culture and whole world that they have built, these dark hidden secrets, but right below the surface. And like, it's unfortunately so very real to how the elite world actually works, and that's
Mhm.
why it's able to parallel itself throughout the series, because it's not that singular villain, it's not that singular time, and that's how Yujing is trying to expose it in her article, to take down the thing from its head instead of its tentacles, and expose how it went down. And likely Alyssa's involved in that, because she, as much as Alyssa was like Eugene was at the formal,
Mhm.
she knows what happens, she sees it happening multiple times. um but yeah, but it's
So so here's a question for you. This isn't like in our notes or anything, but like because we're on this subject, do you think Eugene was at the formal because she's looking for information, or do you think she was there because like, she's invited to this thing? Because like, like you said, like we know Eugene is there picking up on details. Like I definitely have the sense that she's here because she's trying to, like look for I feel like this is the story that like maybe it wasn't like completely active yet, but it's something that she's kind of had on the back burner, like waiting for the right, looking for those crumbs that she can start building into something bigger. Like
Yeah,
I get the feeling that like I'm not gonna say like I mean, I guess like I get the feeling that she probably attends these kinds of social events because, I think she's from the same kind of social circle as Kosuke. So this is the kind of world that she's from. But like it definitely feels like this is something that she has carried with her for a long time that
she
she has always
def-
wanted to pursue and she's hoping she's going to find the break and she got lucky.
and the way that she talks to Noel, she says, our interests just happen to align, and indicating
Right.
that no one asked her to do this expose. She has been Yui Hirahara was probably not as involved with it until Rand got really involved with the Noel part. But like the Kims, I think she's been after them. I think she's been after this concept of this trafficking ring that's going on. And I think like she's ultimately been after kind of like getting whatever justice she can for that girl that she knew. And I think, as kind of Solidarity said in the chat, like, why not both? I think Yujing is probably invited to these events because, she's kind of from this circle. She's this big journalist. She, fits in with this setting, with this world. But I think the reason that she attends is that she's looking for something, and I think especially being at the Kim formal, which if there wasn't something there for Yujing, she, based on what we know of her now, I do not think she would have been interested in attending an event hosted by like an intimate night with the Kims. I
Right.
strongly doubt she would have wanted that unless she thought there was something there for her. So I think
Right.
no how scummy they are. I think I think she was probably invited to all these things through the connections that she has and being part of this world, and especially being someone that Rand is decently close to. But the reason she goes is if she thinks there's something there for her.
That's what I'm thinking because I definitely used to think it was something that she had started on more recently, like, when she started working on Noel's piece. And then as, we started to see that it was much bigger. And obviously, once she confirmed that, no, this was an alignment of interest. Yeah, it feels like you said, this is like she's been chasing this story. It definitely makes me feel like what happened in college was definitely something that involved the Kims, and that's why it was something that was so hard for Kosuke to chase because like they're such a big name. They are
There's,
somebody who's very involved with his family, so it was very dangerous and risky for him to actually go after them and
and
and that's why like for him it's like this is an attack upon us as well as them. You don't have concrete proof for me. I can't just accept this.
like the Kims were literally like Young Chul Kim stepped down from the company in
Mhm.
like at like he stepped down when Rand came in and he had led the company for decades. Like
Right.
there had not been a actual Hirahara in charge for such a long time, and the Hirahara company was being led by the Kims, at least the Korean branch. I think the
Right.
Japanese has generally been in the hands of an elder Hirahara. Um, but the Korean branch, the U.S. of Asia branch, it was hosted by the Kims for so long. So, like you said, these are people who are so close to his family. Like it's basically like if you have a cousin that's like a little weird, a little off, and then somebody comes and they're like, "Your cousin just did this horrible thing," and like I'm not going to give any
Right.
allegories,
And
just like
again because that's why it really stands out to me is because the very specific thing that Kosuke was reflecting on was that like it wasn't just that Yui was told that people will leech. It was that like they will reach onto us and try to tear us down.
Yes.
It's like people will attack us.
They
That's
will
why
want
he turned Nolaways, because,
that.
Nol is here to steal what's ours, to take everything we have. And likewise, this girl is coming to you with these preposterous stories, these allegations that, if aren't true, could really harm somebody's life and, would, by, proxy, could harm our own image as well. Like, I cannot, in good conscience, just believe you just because you say this. So yeah, I definitely feel like it has to be the Kims. And again, because like Eugene's, articles, the story she's working on, like it's got to be,
It's
like
so
narratively
yeah.
right. Um, yeah, it feels like this is a story that Eugene has been chasing for so long, and she's looking for that break. And she shows up at that Kim formal because it's the Kims, and she's hoping she can find something. And lo and behold, there is this awkward, uncomfortable girl sticking out like a sore thumb. And wouldn't you look at that? She's dancing with Kousuke Hirahara. Wouldn't you
Yeah,
look at that? Gun Kim is parading her around. Isn't that interesting? Oh, wouldn't you look at that? She does not look well at all. And, like
exactly.
people are talking about this super drunk girl, and like, oh my God, how embarrassing. Do you remember when we used to get like super drunk like that? Oh my God. Like so much. And like when you mentioned that flashback too, to like them watching Kousuke and Shin-Ae dance, and the fact that she turns from them to
To
Kousuke talking to the waiter.
and
Yeah. Like
she was on to it, and she knew.
yeah, she was
And also,
connecting those dots.
and she's staring at Sangchul too in that panel.
Oh yeah, like it's she's right on Songchul. Wait, did I say Kousuke and the waiter? I meant Songchul. I am my head, I don't know.
I
You know
registered.
what I mean.
Yeah. But yeah, no, she knows exactly what's happening. And it does definitely feel like it was the Kims, because like there's so many different rings, right? Where like she wouldn't have to go so hard at specifically the Kims unless they were involved. Like the Kims themselves might not have been who victimized that girl, but it was at the very least somebody enabled by them. And
Right.
like you said with Kosuke, like it, like not that it forgives the fact that he didn't hear this girl out, that he didn't believe her, because that was wrong of him, and it's realistically one of the worst mistakes that he could have made.
Right.
To not even hear someone out who we know has gone through something that traumatic, but where there's a possibility that they have gone through something that traumatic. But like you said, like his family is so tied with the Kims. He's a teenager who has just come back to his family. He's losing his identity again, thinking that he's finding his identity again. And
He's terrified that now that Noel is back, he's going to steal all of Father's love and attention and adoration. And now Father's going to pay all of his attention to him and not me.
it's like Noel said, like the only thing Kosuke has by design is his family name. And with the Kims being so closely entrenched with his family, and in Kosuke's, as far as he could see, there not being any proof of what happened, like having to try to rectify and act upon that, like it must have, like it would have been terrifying for him. And it, knowing who Kosuke is, it would have led him to not believe it, with everything that Yui says about like people are trying to steal from us, people are trying to leech from us, people don't want us to have what we have because they're jealous. We're like,
Especially because, like you pointed out, like the thing about releasing Noel from the institution to bring Kosuke back was heavily about isolating him. It was
yeah,
because he was out here with friends. He was out here, with a person. How did you say it was having an actual personality for once, thinking for
yeah.
himself. And, like, so like once he gets reined back in, he's, once again reliant upon only his mother and his father. He has only them. So for him to be asked to turn to his family and say, hey, somebody is making these accusations against one of our business partners. they're saying that, you know, this happened to this person. Like how it's basically asking to defy them. And like everything
Yes.
about Kosuke's like his entire coding, like everything, all of his hardwiring tells him you cannot do that. Especially like even if he could say it to his mother, could he go to Rand and say, "Hey, somebody says our business partner did this"? No, he sure could not. He can't even say that, Noel didn't go to school, like no way in hell could he try and do that. Like in his
Yeah.
mind, he could, even if he did try to hear that girl out, I don't think he could ever have faced his family and tried to do that. Like you
And
said,
even
I think it was like partly that he could not even entertain the idea of it because it meant that it would be true. And like you said, like he couldn't face what it means if it is true and
yeah, and
that,
like
it's connected.
and ultimately it's like the thing that he could have changed was believing her, him being someone who was there for her and, like didn't just shut her down, but ultimately like even
Right.
if had stood up to his parents and told them like Yui's in on it. Like
Right.
he wouldn't have actually been able to do anything about them as, this like college kid who just went back home, like, it wouldn't have changed that. The part that the part that could have changed was really just the being able to hear it out, which wasn't like you said, like the what that meant for him to hear it out at that time was so terrifying for him. And
Right.
like that doesn't discount what that girl went through because that we we all know, it
Right. I mean,
but it
that's why he feels so guilty. Like
yeah.
he understands what it means for him. Like I as like hard as those two flashbacks were, I feel like they were so important in
Oh,
showing
absolutely.
that Kosuke, he's a good person. He's a
Yeah.
good person who has done really, really awful things out of like being super misguided. Like I'm not saying that to justify what he's done to these people because like you said, we know he's wrong. He knows he's wrong. That's why he is in there sitting on a public bathroom floor with God knows how many germs hugging a toilet because he knows how wrong it was. It's just that at the time he believed the words of somebody that he thought had his best interests at mind, that he thought was guiding him in the best way that they could at the time, that he was doing with the information that he had at the time the best that he could. And he knows now that he was wrong. He knows now that he has screwed up irreversibly numerous times. He knows he cannot repair that relationship with his brother any more than he could repair than he could bring that girl back. And like I feel like I'm going to cry talking about this. I feel like it shows how human he is. Like Yui manipulated him so much and she was like the only person he really had that he could rely on. And I know we're like so far from theory talks, but like, that's it's a
But I think
tangent. It's a tangent. Like he was really isolated and she was all he had. And now he's realizing that she has led him astray all this time. Or I mean like he's right where she wanted him, but like he
yeah.
thought that she had his best interests at heart. He was doing everything he could to protect the family name, and it turns out that everything he did was just making him look like an asshole. And like it shows how human he is and that like even though he has behaved as an asshole, he is ultimately a good person. And like
He
I think we're going to get to see in time once he's got a lot of coping to do. But
uh
I do think we're going to get to see him try to continue to make up for it like he's been trying. Like that's that thing about like how the formal paralleled that past event. He feels that guilt, he feels bad, and he does want to make up for this.
yeah.
He's got to learn how.
And like the kind of double like meaning of like the way like I think that like that like when things started going wrong, like Kosuke was supposed to be the savior by design, and that's what Yui would have wanted, right? If things are going to
Right.
go, Kosuke's the one to save the girl. Um, but she wouldn't have wanted it to come from anything that's actually genuine. She would have wanted it to come from a place of image. Playing the hero role, and so he's not the hero of the night. He's not the one that saves her. He's not the one that fulfills that like guys that Yui would have wanted, but what he does fulfill is that like his intentions were there, and he took heroic action, and did he did different than he did all those years ago, and he made that internal progress, and like wanted to save her and felt bad about it and knew that what was happening was wrong and wanted to prevent it and wanted to do something about it and was an integral part of that happening, where it's just
Right.
like it's that road that we're on, is that journey of his where like to he's starting to get away from that, what Yui wants and what the family name calls for and the image and mistrusting people, and he's getting towards being able to act on his good intentions and his honestly like he is like an empathetic and like caring and like soft boy person. Like child Kosuke, that he's so soft and he has so many feelings. And like that
Baby Kosuke gets to me every time. It's like that big head and those big eyes and that serious little expression that he always has. I always think about that scene where he's at work and Rand picks him up and all the adults crowd him and they start like baby talking him and like somebody tries to pinch his cheeks and he like in a very like in my head it's a very serious voice says something like, please don't pinch my cheeks, that hurts. And it's just like, it's so not what you would expect from a little kid. And just like, little baby Kosuke had so much potential, and Yui just like snuffed him, and it hurts a lot. Um, I
like
would like so for our YouTube listeners and Spotify, um, our our, our Discord mascot Kosuke is in our chat right now.
he comes and hangs out with us.
He likes to hang out. He says that I may not be a hero in the traditional or even literal sense of the word, but I am Sparkle. Ultimately, a good person, Sparkle. And it's true, Kosuke. We know you are.
It is. And like that's so games that was illustrated at the formal where like, even if the outcome doesn't look like what it should, or and like, you know, there was some design for him to be the hero in the literal traditional sense that, even if that's not what happened, that the way that he was acting and the reactions he was having and the way that he was processing the event, the emotions he was having, the way that he understood what needed to be done, the way that he felt bad, the way that he was concerned, that he stayed with Shin-Ae, that he wanted things to go differently than before. It's just like it's really that like start of it had started a little bit before, but like it embodies that start of like the conflict in Kosuke and that move away from being a Hirahara to acting upon Kosuke's good person intentions. And we see so often that Yui snuffs out people's light. Like we talked about it in Alyssa's segment a while ago. I don't remember if it was in Subversions or in Mirrors and Foils, but like where, baby Alyssa had so much potential, and
Oh, so much.
meeting Yui was what really killed it all and snuffed it all out of her. Where like Kosuke never met Yui. He was born to Yui, and she did that same thing, and she snuffed out his light. But like he is trying to make his way back, and he's he's got his arc going.
So, again, I know this is like kind of off tangent, but because we're on this subject, how we've talked a lot about how Kosuke has a lot of that envy of how good Null is of people and how he just, he knows what to do and how to just, treat people. Somebody in the server pointed this out once. I can't remember who. Um, I hope somebody remembers this, but somebody pointed out that scene in the hospital room when, Shin-Ae wakes up, when Kosuke takes his jacket and he drapes it over Shin-Ae's shoulders. And I always wondered about that because why does he do that? That's kind of weird. He's copying what Noel did when they
Yes,
were all at the
yes.
restaurant. And it's like, oh my God, I never connected that.
He literally like, yeah. And that's
I
like, yeah,
that
he
was like
that's
such a big thing for me, and
really
like it finally connected dots for me because I realized Kosuke never did intend to, like take his jacket off and give it to Shin-Ae, like, which I kind of thought, but like I didn't, have like any strong, feelings about, but it like confirms Noel was taking his off for Shin-Ae, Kosuke was taking his off to eat like a proper gentleman, and then, like, because they did it at the same time, he's like, oh, they thought I was going to do this too. So now here's his opportunity to do that. He's like, Noel did this. I can do this too. Look at me. I'm also a good person.
I can also make friends.
Right? God, it's bless you, Kosuke. Like, oh my God. Something else that really stuck out to me was, and I haven't read the formal arc like really clearly very well in a long time, but if I remember right, didn't they tell Kosuke that that Meg overheard that Yui provided Songchul with the drugs, and like Kosuke accepted it. Like he didn't fight that. It was kind of
I
like,
don't know
yeah,
if it or not. Like I don't
I'm checking.
but ultimately like and this is something that's come up before. I don't remember if we talked about it or if it's like been chatted about. But like where like Yui, Yui
Mm,
Kosuke knows ultimately who Yui is, but
right.
very much like Alyssa, like he he knows that there's something not right about her, that she treats people in kind of these like doll toying with ways. And it's just the
Right.
like he but at the same time, she is the one who raised him and she has shaped his worldview and like he is supposed to be able to trust his mother. And where it's like the similar to Alyssa, where like when you eventually realize that this person has these negative traits with them and that maybe the good traits are not as authentic as you thought, but it's been so long and you've like gone through so much with them and put so much into them and don't have anyone else anymore, like how do you
Right.
how do you overtly accept it? Meanwhile, like when someone tells you like this person did this thing, it's like, yeah, I buy it. Um and it's just
Right.
yeah, and it's just the like it's not enough to like change how you interact in your day to day because without them you have nothing. But like you know.
And it's the like duality again because like remember how he reacts when Shanae calls her like the winch or whatever, which I do feel like might be connected more to Nessa, but still, it's like the fact that it's kind of like that whole like that's my evil mom and only I get to say bad things about her, which like obviously is not the case. Like it's right, like you said, it's that very complicated notion of like knowing that his mom's not really a good person, but also like having trouble reconciling with it. I mean, obviously he's kind of reaching in, a new ground with that, but you know, he's making
Ah,
progress, our Kosuke. Uh I yeah, he just I've got a lot of thoughts and feelings about him, and I feel like I know that we're going to see things get really rough with him for a while, but I think we're also seeing that he wants to take those steps. Like we saw him go to the hospital because he wanted to talk to Noel. Like, I'm really interested to see what his relationship is going to be like with Shin-Ae as we go into our time skip, because I know we've talked about how Shin-Ae is probably going to take Yui's offer and do schooling while we're doing our time skip. And it makes me wonder, like, if she's going, like, is she going to be expected to work during breaks at all? Is she going to be, is she going to be in communication with any of them? I'm really interested in seeing the relationship between her and Kosuke because,
yeah.
as we talk about all the time, she's going to be that bridge, and I feel like she's that person who won't, I don't want to say that she won't give up on Kousuke because, like, she's got her own limits, but I think she's that person who still sees in Kousuke that there's somebody valuable, that there's somebody who wants to be a good person. Like, she knows he's not a horrible person.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, Shin-Ae, especially right now, like, putting together the dots about how this family actually works, I think is going to have a lot more sympathy for Kosuke, especially because, he hasn't abused her in the way that he has abused some other people like Noel, where, like, she doesn't have that emotional, like, reaction tied to his intent. Any hurt that he's caused her has really been more accidental
Right.
and led into by, like, Yui oftentimes. And so, like, I agree where I think, like, she's not going to give up on him because it's easier for her to hold on to that goodness in him and to try to bring it out, especially because she is like a reflection of the people that he's wronged, and he wants to do right by her. He's at this point where he doesn't want to make those mistakes anymore. He wants to change. And
She's also a reflection of Noel, who saw someone in her and pulled it out. And
yes,
so she'll be doing it to Kosuke. Yay! I love
absolutely.
those mirrors.
And, like, I know people before asked about what we think, like, Shin-Ae's course of the story will be, and, like, she's hardest to figure out, I think, because she has less of a concrete direction right now. But, like, if she takes Yui's college offer, someone pointed out that her contract just states that she has to work until, like, the money is paid off,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. I think that
So,
was me. I
it might was it
think
you?
it was me because I was saying that I feel like it could be that it would put her contract on kind of like an indefinite
Yeah.
pause. So, like,
Just
she goes to school and then she has to still go back to work to finish paying off her contract costs or
yeah,
like
and that
pay off that money.
yeah, and, like, that would then bring them back together, and probably,
Mhm.
Kosuke on his own, no Noel around, and he's, like, just off in a foreign country where Kosuke can't keep tabs on him. No Shin-Ae around. Everything's horrible. Everyone is horrible. He knows that his mother is horrible and that, she's drugging him, and, like, would just fall so far into, like, the bad coping, and, like, would put him in that, like, going through it state that we expect him to be at the start of season 2. And, like, if Shanae's contract does get put on kind of an indefinite hiatus, and, like, when she graduates she has to come back and finish it, it would create that, like, catalyst for her to come back and, like, kind of help bring out that light in Kosuke again.
Right. And like if we go back far enough in my Tumblr, like it I've asserted a lot that I always felt that season 2 would probably be kickstarted by everybody coming back together. Like
Mhm.
I've ebbed and flowed a lot where I'd be like, oh, well, now the story is making me change my mind a little bit. But like I'm, once again feeling like we're going to see people going their separate ways and then coming back. And like you said, I like that the way that you put it is like Shin-Ae coming back into Kosuke's life and then, like bringing that illumination back and, like bringing light back into a life that's probably been very dark and drab and dreary because he's going through it. And, he's realized so much of his life is a lie and it feels dark. And then Shin-Ae is kind of like that person who's like, hey, I know like this isn't you. I know that you're better than this. Like we're gonna let's stop this, like I feel like she's going to be really good for him in the sense of, like you said, she knows that there's more to him. She knows that, like she's seen that he wants to try different things. Like he
He,
wants to experience life and try things. He gets awkward and scared.
yeah, and also,
He's
like,
kind of nervous.
Kosuke operates so much on fear, where, like, these fears that he has are really those are what have made him be horrible to people. Like we were talking about at the very beginning with, like, Yui testing him and seeing if he has those insidious traits that the other men have. Like, he doesn't. When he does horrible things, it's not because craving that power, not because he wants to take advantage of people. It's not because of any malicious. It's that he's afraid of these other people, and he
Mhm.
sometimes does take a note out of Yui's book and keep other people down to avoid what he perceives as a possibility of being hurt himself because he's afraid of them. But it's not that, he's just putting people down to raise himself up. He's afraid that they're coming for him, and
Right.
like, and that, he's not good enough. And like, that's such a stark difference from what Yui was trying to pull out of him and what everyone else was doing at the formal and what people did back in college that he was reacting to. And like, it's always like that place of fear when he does things wrong, where he's a good person and he's trying to overcome those like fears. But it's like, so like, it's a process. And he like, and like Shin-Ae, I think like she sees that. I don't know how like consciously she processes it, but she sees that like when he doesn't act like a normal human, it's like out of that place of fear and
Mhm.
discomfort.
He I think he kind of needs what Shin-Ae needed, is like he needs somebody who can validate him, but in like, like a good way, not, like just to, fluff him, but like he needs somebody who can speak to his good traits. And like he needs a buddy system, first of all, like somebody who's going to be there and be like, I'm going to help you do these things. He needs somebody who is going to, I had a word and then it slipped from my mind, but yeah, he needs somebody. I mean, he's got that in Hansuke, but like, God bless him, Hansuke is a little too soft. Like Shin-Ae's good. She's good at kind of like drawing lines, and that's really what Kosuke needs.
And
Is
he's
like,
also like, such a big part of it is that she's not tied to him in
right.
like a, yeah,
It's
like,
not that's actually a good point, because we have talked about that, how like on some level Kosuke probably feels like Hansuke is like obligated to treat him well and to love him, whereas like somebody else who sees the value in him and speaks of it and treats him well without like expecting anything in return, who he knows doesn't want his money or to have his babies or to marry him, somebody who just like actually sees him for who he is, who has literally seen him at his worst,
yeah,
and still sees value in him. I think that's going to be so invaluable to him. Um,
absolutely.
he needs it.
He does. And like, yeah, and it just
We see you, Kosuke. You're valid. You're more than enough in our book.
Kosuke up. Oh,
Ah,
our
look
Kosuke
at us. We made
part.
it through everything. We even went on some tangents. I'm
Wow.
proud of us.
Look at us. Look, guys, we're getting better at it. We're tightening it up. We're also
Yay!
we're slightly more realistic about how much we talk now. I think that's a
Yeah, that helps. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a shift that happened in our planning. um yeah. And so thank you to everyone who's listening. As mentioned, we are now not only recording live in the Discord with our lovely audience, but we, are posting the recordings to YouTube, and we like I see you guys listening on YouTube, and I'm like astounded by it. Like I can't believe how many people are actually clicking on these and like watching them. But we are also now on Spotify by request. Like I'm so like I can't believe
Like
where that.
literally every week we go through this. We're always like, wait, how many people listen? What? Like, I feel like no matter how many weeks we go through this, it's never going to quite, we're never going to get used to it. We're just always blown away by everybody's support. I'm just really glad that you guys keep tuning in and that you really like listening to us. It makes me
Yeah,
happy.
we literally were just like, we need an outlet for this brain rot, and we were like, maybe if we got in the voice call every other week in the Discord, like maybe it'd be fun, and maybe some people would listen and have fun. And now it's like a thing that people listen to, and it's absolutely wild to me. And I appreciate so much everyone who's here, and I can't believe that we are now on like multiple platforms. Crazy to
By request.
by request. Yeah. We're
Thank you
not on
so
Apple
much,
Podcasts
everyone.
because like not Apple's harder to upload on, but
Boo.
yeah, I tried.
And also, if you are on Discord, we have a channel where people can submit any suggestions that they have for us, any ideas that they would like to hear us talk about. So that is a nice incentive to join our Discord.
Really fun over here, guys.
All right. Thank you guys for joining.
This is the conclusion of our kind of 3-part series on Theories of I Love You, which ended up turning into a Kousuke character analysis because we are character analysis oriented people. But yeah, great episode.
I had fun. I hope you guys had fun.
Yay!
Yay!